And hello everyone, and thanks for tuning in to our last live show on this Steam Game Festival. I have to be honest, we are a little bit exhausted, but fresh and fit with me is our lead narrative designer, Stefan. Hello, Stefan.
Hello, how you doing? Very good to be here. Thanks, gents, for making sure that we have this last moment, um, and an last day of time to talk all interesting stuff about the story of the game.
Yeah, if you would have some bad thoughts, you would say, okay, the story comes last.
Yeah, well, you could almost say like I'm the kind of guy that tries to make sense of it all, within a greater narrative scope of the things. I think something that happens quite a lot as well in the games industry is that the story or the narrative of a game is kind of like what you said is one of the last things, or maybe one of the things that people don't really think about that much, which is of course a shame. And that's why I'm here because I don't know if you've noticed, but I think like being able to write and being able to make something fun out of it. I guess the best games out there all have good stories, even if they don't really show sometimes that they have like a very obvious storyline. Most of it have had like like somebody looking at it and dialogue and everything makes sense. So yeah, no, I'm very happy to kind of like hopefully lift the tip of the veil of how things go in the creative minds of a writer, and but not only that, also like how to like work together as a team to make it make
Yeah,
Beam a kick-ass game, right?
you were not the first person on the payroll. I have to admit that. And we had a story in mind, but since you joined, a lot of has changed from a rough concept to a plot that really stands for something or something is happening there. Well,
Yeah.
it's a narrative medium after all. The only thing is that this story is more dynamic. So, how did you tackle the problems coming onto a project where everyone already had a vision, but nothing was in shape?
No, I think it's very interesting. I think that also separates a little bit what like the different forms of writing that you have. I mean, I come from a background that involves that's journalism, so that involves a lot of working with other people to make kind of like written content or any kind of creative content. So I mean, the key there is that you're not doing it on your own. So coming into Beam, which was all accidental, which is also, by the way, a funny story, but undoubtedly we'll get to that later. Um, Coming in, it was much better knowing that there was already a bit of vision there, from different points of view and different kind of perspectives. Uh, for me, that was not an easier or a more difficult thing to do. It's just a kind of like a different role that I take on. Then it's literally trying to make sense and connect all these little parts together and make it so that it's an interesting story. And then of course you start thinking, what is an interesting story, and what can make it interesting. I mean, the fact, like, one of the things that we had to work with, um, I mean, it was pretty obvious from the beginning. It's like, look, the design of the marble, it's like a rolling escape pod. Um, I'm not going to say then it's like, Jens, maybe it's better if you, like forget about the whole rolling escape pod and do something different. No, I mean, that's a key thing. So if you already have that, then everything else kind of like flows after, and it's just trying to make sense of it in a really in the most fun way possible. And I think when I came on board with you guys, you already had a pretty consistent and concrete ideas that it was really good for me as a handhold to use those and start working and hit the ground running, but actually with some very interesting stuff already in place.
Captain Coffee, thank you for the follow. Thank you very much. We had from the beginning, we knew, okay, it was the escape pod, as you said, it was around the escape pod, and we knew, okay, there had to be someone in the escape pod. But how exactly did then Martin and the marble came to be?
That's a good question. I mean, I still remember, like, we came over, we decided to meet No, it's not that we decided to meet. We decided like, look, the best thing we need to do right now is like get together under one roof and start talking about the game. And essentially what happened was that what you said, like we have Marvel, we have the escape pod. We have kind of inspiration for different kinds of games that we wanna. This is that we wanna include. Like the tone of the game, for instance, you mentioned to me before, like we want to kind of go for a Portal-esque kind of like tone. Well, I mean, if you haven't played Portal, you should. All viewers,
Definitely.
that's incredibly important. Um, but yeah, that makes it, of course. Then you start thinking about like, okay, what can we do? Like what can we make fun? And like just having a rolling escape pod, which already I still remember that concept was like, okay, a rolling escape pod that's called the Marble. Then I think the tone needs to be, like humoristic. It needs to be kind of like tongue in cheek and casual. We can't make a super gritty hardcore war story of a rolling escape pod called Marble. So I think from there on, it pretty much went into quickly into what if we have this guy inside that actually doesn't want to be inside and wants to get out, or and then come from there on, you started talking a little bit about, okay, who's this guy? Like what happened? The other thing that was already kind of established was the fact that we had this interdimensional rift, and including the like kind of like the beams, the different colors. Um, of course, one thing I need to say is like I hope there's not going to be too many spoilers out there, but
I will try to interrupt you when it gets
yeah,
dangerous.
because I'm thinking right now, it's like, oh, wait a minute, we need to not talk too much. But anyway, certain elements were there, like the light beams, the escape pod. But Martin, for instance, he as a person had not grown yet. And then, of course, it starts the interesting creative part, which is who the hell is this dude Martin? Where does he come from? What
did,
kind of a guy is
did
it?
did it did it change a little bit how the characters are when we did cast the voice actors and how they portray it? Did that factor in into later writing?
No, definitely. That's a good point. But it kind of like hand in hand. Like we already knew we wanted to have a little bit of a little bit of a goofball. So somebody who wanted to become like to be taken serious, but wasn't actually like a little bit of a man child, but not all the time. So I had elements there. Um, Essentially just a guy out of his depth, right? And being stuck in this marble, in this escape pod, and no way else to go but forward, essentially. Um, and then the voice actors came along and they really gave it their spin to it as well. And then, of course, that inspired me and us to even put kind of like more and different lines. There was a lot of dialogue involved as well. And from there on, it just grew and grew. That like right now, like we're talking about like different chapters and what needs to be included in different chapters. But I definitely think that getting the voice actors on board uh, really did help it. But what was really helpful as well is that the voice actor for the Marble, she got on board very quickly. Like we were sitting there, talking and having a coffee about like, okay, well, what should it be? And she was really that was a really beneficial kind of like, like just having a chat. Because
Yeah, that for us too.
yeah,
It felt with Vera as the voice actress for the Marvel, it really just fell into place. She is
yeah,
made for that role.
no, definitely. So talking to her also inspired me and influenced me in how to kind of like use her personality in the character that I was writing. So it goes hand in hand. Really goes hand in hand. Uh, but yeah, like I mean, all the jokes, not all the jokes, but a lot of the jokes that just they came out of like they start dropping.
and,
And the
and
good thing is yeah.
and speaking about the jokes, how important is the aspect of humor in the game then?
I think it's very important. I think it's very important because you have to mate the gameplay experience with the kind of like the narrative experience, and it needs to be in such a way that it's fun. The game needs to be fun playing, but at the same time, you also need to explain all these little elements that are happening in the world, right? And you can do that without story. You can do that without dialogue. You can make it very basic and very straightforward, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But where's the fun in that? Like what's the kind of like additional experience that you have? Everybody still talks about Portal, how the characters of Portal were just like made the experience so much more fun. I mean, the puzzle experience of Portal was great, but the story was like even
Yeah.
better. Like everybody still talks about the cake song and whatnot. So um, getting to that point, that means like how important the narrative element can be. So um, coming back, like there were a lot of elements already in the game that were present, and I think I'm very happy the way it now kind of like organically grew into this thing where now we are, like happy the way it's going. But to be honest, like it's funny the process as well, because we sat down, Jens, you and I, and we talked about what do we need to do, and I kind of like shot off a couple of ideas, or essentially just continuously ideas. And you said, no, I want to have a little bit more like this, or oh, that sounds great. And that at the end of the day, we kind of had a basic story, and from that point onwards, it was just kind of like fine tuning and refining it.
Yeah, what you don't know is when we started in 2013 with the first rough sketches of the game, we had Martin as the main hero, as a hero, and there was no ball. There was Martin running around with a fog gun in his hand.
Yeah.
And then we decided that the gameplay is more fun with a ball, and also there was Vera already there and helping us with some tutorial voice lines for stuff we made, and so she became really quickly the computer voice of the marble. So then we thought, okay, we don't need this Martin guy, and he later came back as the occupant of the marble. And that was
Yeah.
from going to the character to a ball to the character in the ball was a journey for us.
No, yeah, it's really funny. Like it's funny how these accidental, like people they come on board and then just kind of like make it whole. And now we have a Martin stuck in a ball,
Yeah,
trying to get out. Being an adventurer, but
and being
like
the big shot.
yeah, being the big shot adventurer stuck in a rolling escape pod, and but at the same time, for instance, Marvel, we also made a conscious choice to make her kind of like a little bit more not grumpy, but a little bit more, like a little bit more spiky in that sense. So there would be a relationship between the two characters throughout the game that would slowly develop. I mean, that's the thing that we talked about as well, and we thought about, and personally, I'm thinking about it well, like the character arc. So, for instance, if in the beginning of the game there's more conflict, and hopefully through the actions that you do, the conflict lessens. But those things keeps it making going forward as well, the story and just the general experience. But coming back to what you was just saying about the humor, I think it's very important, and like I think it's something that comes out, and personally, naturally for me, it's like yeah, like funny things that just pop up in my brain and then just write it down. At the same time, maybe a different way to ask that question is like how important was it to be serious? Like how serious do you want the game to be? And I'm very happy that the way it's currently looks like that they are certain serious elements, like dramatic elements that themes throughout the game that are in the background that don't become really, or maybe not very obvious because it needs to be about the fun part. But at the same time, yeah, there's things in there that really do make sense at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
I'm very happy that we kind of like managed to kind of slowly move that forward.
The humor for aspect is, as you said, it's really important. Do you have a favorite joke? Well, I can you tell you mine. It's in the fifth level when you swip all the levers, and it's the third one where oh, that's three down. By the way, do you know that three is a magic number? And she replies as magical as your career, Aspirant Captain Martin. And that is just it's one of my favorites there.
No,
So
I
mean.
have, yeah, I have one. I think that's further down the line. This chapter, well, one of the other chapters.
Yeah, but I think
it's,
you can give a little teaser on this.
yeah, no. Do you know that Andre? Gosh, what was that? Bocelli song, "Time to Say Goodbye" was very
Yeah, yeah.
famous in the '90s. Yeah, that classical one. Well, I have her, like going into this kind of like final, the Titanic is sinking, goodbye mode. And then automatically she starts like she starts like singing that song because it's like hard coded. So yeah, anyway, it's something that hopefully when it will come out, like it's gonna be as much fun. But when I had it, I was like, okay, this is ridiculous. Like where's this coming from? And it came out of nowhere. It's just sitting here writing it, and boom! All of a sudden, I'm looking up on YouTube. It's like, what was that song again? So yeah,
Oh well. Damn! It was a
yeah,
thought
and
on my
stuff like
head, and
yeah, no, but like there's other stuff as well. It's like like
well, you should see some of the outtakes when the guys are recording. Well, we are recording to have them in the same room and to actually have that interaction between them because they are playing off each other when they record this,
yeah.
and there are
Yeah, no,
so
you
funny outtakes in the voice lines that is.
like it's funny what you said as well. It's like we talked about it before, where the dialogue, it just grew. Like before, it was the story, the narrative was the bare boned experience to keep everything moving forward, right? But at one point with the dialogue lines, and we talked about is like some of the lines, especially in the beginning, were too long, so we had to condense them into smaller things. And then we got the kind of rhythm going, and especially also with the voice actors, they came back again and they recorded even more lines. And we started saying like, wow, okay, this is getting like a lot more than we thought it would be. Um, and they had, you can hear they had fun as well. And with Tobias, yeah, like he is kind of like organizing, making sure that the kind of the vision and everything gets kind of translated well as well. Um, that was just fun. I mean, I still remember like one of the first things that happens is that that Martin is in the marble, and he starts like complaining that he's asthmatic and he wants to get out, and like goes into panic mode, and it's all these funny things that this hotshot adventurer like thinking that he's such a like top dog, and he's essentially just an aspirant captain, a trainee captain, getting stuck in this life and death situation, and the only thing that is keeping him safe is this snarky escape pod. Yeah, that already right now I'm thinking like, yeah, that's just ridiculous. So let's just make fun of it.
Especially that what you were just talking about. You guys can still hear this in the official gameplay trailer, because that we kept that conversation in there, even though it was too long for the beginning of the game. There we just had not the time to put it in the corridors there. We had it that we were halfway through the level and they were still talking, but it's in the gameplay trailer.
Yeah. That's something that's also experience, right? Like you get to learn, it's like, okay, wait, and then you all of a sudden you start saying like, no, this is really important. We really need to say this because this lift goes up and doesn't go down, right? And then at one point you realize, okay, we just need to cut the words and make it as short as possible, just to like keep it flowing and keep it going as well. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the important thing as well. It needs to be there in the background. If you make it too obvious, then it becomes annoying. It's like the unskippable cutscenes idea. You don't want to have that, but at the same time, yeah, there's all these and that's something that I definitely like started to experience and saw, which is you really need to explain the story in the least amount of words, and that's something that happens always with writing, which is you need to be as short as possible. Like short, swift, and elegant, and you need to be it in such a you need to write in such a way that you say the most with the least amount of words, and it's clearly also the case now with the script and the storyboard and all the like the detailed story outlines for Beam.
Yeah, sometimes the red marker comes out and then words
Yep.
get cut.
Yeah. And then I get like, yeah, I cut this word. Is that okay? It's like, yeah, of course, it's okay, like, and then we'll try to figure that out and put it somewhere else, and or make it a lore text, or like do these things there. So it's a fun experience, but at the end, yeah, like it's not as easy as just writing it and then saying, okay, that's it, done. Like don't have to do anything anymore. No, it's about writing it, and that's when it starts. Like here's the first idea, and then you go, this joke doesn't work, or this line is too long, or like that elevator that you were talking about is actually not there. So then you need to start to come back and rewrite it again, and yeah.
Do you have a message that you wanted to relay with the story as it in the final version?
I mean, there's not a message per se, because I think it's too much on the nose, right? Like, oh, like a message is something like war is bad, or like
Okay, or do you want
don't
to say
lie.
something with the story then?
Um, I think it's essentially it's about like it's about friendship. I would say it's about friendship, and even if you think that the person next to you is not going to be a friend and you hate his or her guts for various whatever reasons, somehow situations like being stuck in an interstellar rift uh, can make it so that at the end of the day you can actually become friends. Whatever the odds.
Yeah.
Um, that's it. I think it's about friendship.
Yeah, we have
The
this
theme.
joke when we do the audio in the levels that Beam is a romantic comedy. When you look at the first act of the game, it's just this fighting, and you always have this romantic comedy where the two stars they hate each other. So
No, I mean, now you say it like it's actually it's a romantic comedy. It's like a marriage story without the love.
yeah,
It's it's like one of those few love stories where you just see the bad stuff. Yeah, it's that's true. That's true. But I mean, for instance, like the marble how she came to be was kind of like, what if you have this escape pod that is part of um, it's part of like a mothership, like a big interstellar spaceship, and the mainframe, the general computer system is mother, and then the marble is kind of like an individual part of that just becomes like a self-contained AI entity, an AI assistant in that sense. So, what if something happens along the way? What if, like, what if things are not exactly working the way they're supposed to, or maybe, like you think they are, but at the same time, maybe there's like some secrets behind it. So, there's a lot of stuff in there that makes it interesting. That's the key as well. Like building this up between Martin and Marvel. A lot of it is essentially drama is conflict. So if there's no conflict, there's no story.
yeah,
I mean, it's very roughly said so, but I mean, if the obvious conflict is okay, you're in a spaceship into the interstellar rift, you crash. Okay, that's the conflict, right? But if you're there then and nothing happens, then there's no conflict. So there always needs to be kind of like a reason for people to keep going.
yeah,
Um, And that's something that we figured out along the way as well, right? Like we had all these little bits and bobs that we started like putting together. It's like, what if we have something here, and then what if something else happens then afterwards, and like, how can we connect those two? And then that was interesting as well. And then I worked a lot with the level designers as well. It's like, well, what if we have something here, and then the next moment something else happens, like something explodes or something just collapses, and you need to find a different route, right? So yeah.
yeah. How did you actually come to this project? How was your way to us?
You wanna you wanna talk about what happened at Gamescom? That's the one.
Well, it happened at Gamescom.
Yeah.
It's one of those
Oh yeah,
Gamescom
no, that sounds.
stories.
Yeah, it's one of those Gamescom. Gamescom was still there, which was last year. How things can change in such a short time, but I've been going to Gamescom for I would say like 4 or 5 years now in a row. In a row, and I I was on the lookout for kind of game writing jobs. I mean, the two loves in my life, one of them is video games and the other one is writing. And I got to the point in my career that I could say, okay, let me try to make this a reality. Let me try to combine this. Let me try to make this in the creative endeavor that I actually, like I would love to further explore. I mean, the writing is a very solid base, and the video games is a very solid base. Why not like try to extend that and go further down the line? Um, so I had various meetings with different people, mostly more on the commercial aspect as well. So where you would, for instance, it's something called copywriting, where you write for companies or entities, and you do it in a very commercial way. Meaning commercial, like they would say, like, well, we need to say this. Can you write it for us? And then you would write it, and it's a lot of it. It's like newsletters or store text, like Steam store text and stuff like that. But anyway, I mean, the real thing that I was looking for was, of course, actual game writing, creative experience. And I was working in a different role, and and two guys just came up to me and said, like, "Can I borrow your pen?" I'm like, "Okay." Of course, like last day, last I think it was the last day of Gamescom. So I gave them the pen, and they said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I do this." And actually, but apart from what I'm doing right now, I'm also on the lookout for like writing jobs. I just said it. I wasn't expecting anything, and you guys we're actually working on a game, and we're looking for more people. Um, and it's like, okay, well, let's exchange information, and not ever really thinking about, okay, now I've got a new job or something like that. I mean, don't forget at that point, Gamescom on the professional side of things, there's a lot of meetings happening. There's a lot of people saying really cool stuff, showing off really cool stuff. Meetings behind closed doors and whatnot. But it does take time before something comes out of it. So we met in August because you were the guy with the pen, and I got my pen back, which is good. And then afterwards, down the
Oh, and we lost him. I don't know what happens there.
oh, something went wrong.
Yeah, I see. You crashed.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I crashed here. Am I back in?
there we go. Yeah, there we go.
Are we back in again?
Yeah, you're back in. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Somehow.
Well, that's it. That's the situation because of the COVID situation. We cannot really meet in person. So all this week we try to get the people remote in, and of course sometimes the internet is the internet.
Yes, yeah, no, definitely. I mean, once a week we have a call. I think it was very good that we actually met real life. Like that helps so much. But mind you, a lot of the game industry development, a lot, like is remote, especially
Yeah.
with independent studios. It's remote. It's the way it is, which is funny because right now I'm calling you guys from well, not calling, but I'm streaming from Spain. So
uh,
yeah, like we have people everywhere, right? I mean, that's a really cool part as well.
Stefan, the fun thing is you just dropped out right on the punchline of the story, and so the chat is now like, we will never know. Please tell us.
What was the punchline again? Like, what story
Well,
was he talking?
well, basically, we have a great narrative designer because I was in need of a pen, and
Yes,
just in the meeting before that, we had a meeting with the publisher for Bean before, and they stole my Unity pen. I had a Unity
that
pen,
was it.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah.
stole it, and I just realized it in front of your booth, where you were
Yeah, and
sitting.
then yeah,
So I
yeah,
was like, damn it, they stole my pen. And if they would not have stole your pen, we would not have a great narrative designer. So,
yeah. No, but it was so accidental because I wasn't saying anything about like, oh, like here I am, I'm a narrative designer. No, you just needed a pen, and I was there, and we exchanged contact details. And a couple of months later down the line, I was going to Germany in the middle of the winter to talk story about
well,
Bean.
for Spain, that was winter. For this here, it was still t
Um,
shirt weather.
yeah, no, I know. You get used to the weather here, but it gets pretty darn hot in Spain. So yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's a story. No, but it's a really good point because as far as story goes, that's a pretty incredible. That's a pretty incredible chance encounter there. So that's
So
all good.
the tip for all young, inspiring narrative designers would be, if you want to write story for a game, do always have a spare pen with you.
Oh yes, but always have a pen, always have a notebook. I mean, it sounds ridiculous, and maybe I'm an old fart, but I have like next to my bedside I have like a little notebook, and I carry it around with me, and the pen is always important. Like yeah, of course you do all the writing on the computer, whatnot, but so many times I've been just in the middle of somewhere on the train or waiting in a line, or like waiting for somebody to actually ask me for a pen, and I go like, oh, wait a minute, what if I do it like this? And then so
So
yeah, no, yeah.
that analog way, let's call it analog way of writing, is still part of your process, or what is your process in writing, for example, Beam?
That's a good question. I mean, and it's also not an easy question to answer. I mean, the creative writing process has been informed by years, and I mean, I'm talking about years and years of experience. Not just experience, but also failure. like the amount of rejections you get as a writer, it's incredible. And you need to steel yourself. I mean, I've got like it's weirdly enough, like there's some people out there that are just really brutal in their feedback as well. And again, I was studying journalism, and I had people come up and say like, oh, the story is shit, whatever, blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, wow, okay, that really, like brought down my morale of continuing. But through and through, somehow I did get, at the end of the day, I went back again to writing, because there's this part of me that is creative and wants to express itself. And at that point, I had like plenty of, of, of time also to, yeah, to think about things, but also why do things happen, and find interesting pieces, and what makes a great story, and read a lot. You need to read a lot. And you need to play a lot of games as well. It's like, how do these games, like develop? And um, so yeah, almost 10 years down the line, 10 years in the video games industry made me go like, hey, you know what? I actually want to do this for real. Also, because I think, and this is a very important thing, if at one point down the line, if at one point you do something, like it could be anything related to creative stuff or art, and you go like, you know what, I can do this better, then definitely do it. Like go for it. See how it is. I'm not saying this from a point of view of, um, like you being too arrogant and you can never do this. No, no, no. Do it. Try it. See how it is. Learn, experience, and study, because you'll figure out that A, it might be really tough. B, you might be actually doing it much better than this other guy. So um, I would say go for it. But the creative process, how does it work? I'm like a sponge, and I suck up everything that comes along, and it can go anyway. Like, I mean, reading, Netflix, going to museum, the local landscape. We have, 3 cats. They do weird stuff. All that stuff, like gets kind of like stored, and I kick ass in Triviant, like Trivial Pursuit, because all these like useless Wikipedia facts just keep on being stored in my head. And I realized as a writer, I use a lot of that Wikipedia stuff to inform my writing, and to go forward with it. And same with like with science fiction and fantasy. I mean, there's a lot of science fiction and fantasy out there. There's a lot of stories, a lot of fanfic. There's just a lot of stuff out there, and you keep on reading, and you keep on learning things. And then one point down the line, you go like, oh, that's a really cool thing, or that's a great story, or I love the way how that movie ended, and you pick it up and you kind of like absorb it, so that the moment where it comes down to it, and we have a talk, you kind of like let your process be kind of like there's a couple of guidelines almost, like I said, like drama is conflict. So if you know that if nothing is happening on the page, you need to make something happen, right? So there's one thing.
Yeah. But that deals
Yeah.
right into my next question then. What does how does writing for a game actually work then? How do you
It's a
tackle
different.
that?
Yeah, no, it's definitely different from kind of like everyday, like, so you have everyday writing, which is like more, you write like for instance articles, newsletters, and then you have my personal creative writing, which is I'm in my own world and I have this idea, and you think like, okay, you just need to express it, and you put it down on paper, and it just goes and rolls into something bigger, and before you know it, you have something, right? But I have to say, like, that thing, personal creative writing, is probably one of the most rewarding things that can happen if somebody comes up to you and say, I love what you just wrote, and somebody did that with me, and that's what made me go like, oh, this is amazing. I definitely want to explore this further. And then you go to the game design writing, and game design writing, or making like the story for a game, is collaborative. That's it. That's really like, it's not, like it's creative collaborative writing. It means that you need to sit down. You cannot write a story and then like expect people to go, that's it. No, you need to write the story taking into account the level design. You need to take into account, is it even possible what I'm suggesting? Like, how does these gameplay mechanics work? I can't all of a sudden write one story and then go, okay, guys, by the way, I want to have a massive explosion. And you go like, it's not going to work, Stefan. This is, like, we don't have the resources and the manpower, or like the assets to do this. So you need to start thinking about, what can the team do? Can the team do something and make something out of your writing, and so it becomes like a collaborative experience. Like I said, it's teamwork, and that's what the writing is, and that's also why you have to go into this writing, and you need to. It's not about having a tough skin, because you need to have this anyway, right? You need
Yeah,
to be
with
able to say
everything that
like
you do here.
with everything. And if I say to you, Jens, like, look, the way the marble moves is not exactly, and you don't have to be an asshole about it to say to a person, this is not working, but be constructive. And this is something that you're going to experience in the game, that everybody is like this, and there's going to be a lot of talented people out there, but you need to be you need to do that, and you need to work as a team to do that. That's the most important thing. It's a team effort. And essentially the way I see it is that you take all these little elements that people want and people put in, and you say as the writer, this is going to work, that's not going to work. That's it. Like,
Mm.
and then you could say like, no, I really want to have that in. Okay, then let's try to find another way. Like, there's always a way. That's the other thing. I have a lot of those sayings out there. Like, there's always a way. Blah blah blah. Make things light and elegant. But yeah, that's it. I think the main difference in writing is that the actual process of writing, which is you sit down and you start writing, and this is something that I've learned. There's no good way to start. You just have to start.
Yeah.
And it's better to write something crap, because you can always go back.
On
But
on
and
on
that Yeah.
on this, I can shed some light from the other side. We have the luxury of having a narrative designer who gives us input, and we have to fit it somehow to the level. And at the end of the day, we are looking, okay, what is the situation and what does he want to do or say or deliver in this scene, in this situation, and how can we keep this in when we change what is happening. And um, but good example is just the start of the game. There was this whole dialogue about, okay, you're here and I protect you for all these hazards and all this, and then pick up your controls and go right. And what we basically do was we had the marble saying, okay, pick up the controls and go right. All is in there. Where to go, that he has to do something. It was just broken down into one line, and then if the player just idles like a minute at the start and does nothing, we put in the rest dialogue, hey, I said go right because blah blah blah. And this was a way for us to keep in what we get on input from the narrative design, and put it in the game, that it works with the gameplay and everything. That just a little tip from the other side if you get these ideas. And but
Oh, definitely.
I am getting off track here.
No, I think what you're saying is definitely makes a lot of sense. Definitely is also true, which is, um, go right. That's literally the dialogue, right? And there's this
Yeah.
whole explanation behind it. If you go right and blah blah blah, and the ship is about to explode, and we try to manage to use that information a little bit here and there. But that's why, for instance, uh, technically my title is not storyteller or game storyteller or anything like that. No, it's narrative design. A narrative is, for instance, the succession of the plot points, right? But it's also everything that's around it. So what do you see? Well, you see a bridge, where you just wake up. Okay, that thing that the bridge of the ship. It's not like where you are somewhere else, because everything ties together. The fact that the player experience will go the way it is, it's all there, like it's all surrounding what you see. And I think a lot of the narrative storytelling is, I wouldn't say subconscious, but it's details. It's hidden in the background, right? It's like, it's, for instance, it's not telling what a person is feeling. It's showing what a person is feeling. For instance, I mean, one of the talking about the jokes again, like one of the things that apparently, it's kind of like a favorite is the one that Martin makes a little girly scream when one of the
Yeah.
floors kind of collapses. Well, that immediately says a couple of things, like, okay, floors collapsing, meaning that it's unstable. The ship is not, like, stable anymore. Whatever happened, right? The second bit is that this guy thinks that he's like hotshot whatever. But at the end, he's just kind of like a little girl stuck inside, like an escape ball. Of course, it's a little bit more exaggerated in that sense because that's what we want to go for with the humor. But that's exactly one of those things that there's a couple of things behind that for a lot of people that you don't consciously think about it, but we do as designers, as level designers, as game programs and all that stuff, and writers as well, because this does tell a little bit of a story.
Yeah, you wrote an awesome prologue cutscene, and we start producing this. It is really of course it's my own cutscene, so I like it, but it's an epic cutscene at the beginning of the game. But the first draft it was like roughly 5 minutes, so we started
Yeah,
to make it smaller, and we took basically all the ideas we get from the story. We want, what do we want to say? We want immediately introduce he's a man child. We want immediately introduce it's his fault everything is happening. We want immediately introduce why he's the only one left, and all this is in this. But we broke it down to 2 minutes 30, and you saw the final storyboard video. You saw that, and I think what the artists then they also creative work. They try to put all these words into an actual action scene, and that is a good example on we kept the essential parts of what we want to tell and what Stefan wanted to tell in this cutscene, and try to make it from a cinematic point of view epic.
no, yeah, you're completely right. I mean, the 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 the, the prologue cutscene, that's the interesting bit with the story as well. The story doesn't just evolve; it's there and that's it. You need to see this like we really sat down for a day and we said like, okay, what's happening in the beginning, what's happening in the middle, what's happening in the end, and you keep on going like that. And then afterwards, for me personally, it was much easier to just put all those things back together and say what then needs to happen in the prologue. The prologue needs to set the scene, needs to set the character, needs to immediately provide conflict. And that's not easy. Like you need to say like, okay, the ship, something needs to happen. This character is there on the bridge. It needs to show certain character aspects. But it's funny because we already knew those things that like Martin was a bit of a slacker with a big mouth. Okay, then let's put him in a situation where it's obvious that he's a bit of a slacker with a big mouth, right?
Yeah.
And then also introduce the fact that there's a concept like the mainframe AI. Then we need to introduce there's something happening. What happened, for instance, what happened to the other crew members? That's also something that is explained in the prologue.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Like then you get 5 minutes and it sounds great on paper, and then somebody starts making sense out of it. It's funny because I make sense out of the ideas, and then somebody else makes sense out of my ideas, and then I go back and say like, hey, let's make sense out of what you just made and fine tune it, go left and go right. Um, and I think it in the end it really does work, like in every little bit of a way you get better ideas, and I think that's really cool. So that way that people are working together on the project, on the game. I think that's a great like it's a great partnership, like that's I can see it already, and I can see it like for instance how this prologue is making sense. First time I saw the rough cut, I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is already amazing.
Yeah, and this is a tip I can give to those. Well, Beam was my initial idea, but you are not married to this idea. You have to be open to changes, to evolve along as you go. You cannot stick with. But I had the idea. It was like this. Everyone on the team needs to be open to suggestions and put to use what input the other team members give and evolve the whole project. That is something that is important, at least to me and to our team.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit what else you're working on? If you are allowed to, I know how NDAs go these days, but uh,
Yeah, no, I am currently well. So one of the things is that I work as kind of like the writer for Eugen Systems, which is a French indie studio based in Paris, and they make World War II strategy games. Essentially, that's the other thing that I'm really like really into, which is World War II military history strategy games, and their game Steel Division 2. And that's again, it's a partnership, it's a collaboration. There's a couple of really, like well-educated experts, people with PhDs in history that provide like a lot of the kind of historical authenticity of the game. Um, and there, my role is far much more to kind of make it a little bit more, like make the writing interesting, make sure that everything makes sense as well. Everything is correct, of course, grammatically and spelling wise. That's one thing. There's a couple of things happening there, but I can't really tell you what is happening. But that's an NDA. The other part is that I still do, of course, like I still do some of the other work that I do, which is more in the communication, kind of like the public relations area, marketing essentially. And I work on my own stories, of course. And my own stories, that's like I read an interview with a really really cool writer that I highly recommend, which is the Jeff van der Meer, which is he. I'm not sure if you know him, but he wrote Annihilation trilogy. Annihilation, of course, they made it into a movie with Natalie Portman and Netflix. I highly recommend reading that book because it's pretty cool. But he said, I feel like he's continuously working on things. Like there's like a dozen projects out there with 20% notes, 20% writing, and I try not to do that because it's tough. Because part of part of my creative brain goes like, I want to write it down, and then you write it down, and then halfway through you go, it's okay. Maybe I need to put it aside for some time, and then you start writing something else because it's an equally cool idea. And at one point, you have this closet full of kind of like half ideas that are shit and not really great. And to make it really great, you need to go over it and make a revise and blah blah blah. Like you need to make it great. But yeah, I'm writing my own stories. I'm writing my own, of course, like book length stories, mostly dark stuff, like horror, with a bit of dark fantasy in there as well. So yeah, that's kind of like what I'm working with on the background. But right now, still, what I'm doing is, of course, kind of like knee deep and still finishing the story and the narrative for Beam.
Yeah, and you can expect like 3 whole chapters of conflict then. As we heard, conflict is
The old
very
chapters
important.
of marital conflict, of bad romance. Yeah, badly written romance. That's what it's gonna be like. It's
um, do you see an advantage of going like we try to do this, going live with development streams, showing part of the development on Twitch or here on Steam, or little videos on YouTube? Do you think that's important? Is that something you could recommend to other studios?
definitely. I think it's yeah. I think it's very important to do that because I think I worked now 10 years in the industry. I worked in really big companies, Electronic Arts, but also smaller studios, indie studios, really lots of different things. And what I noticed is that the game development, one of the things that is not surprising, but really came out to be, was the collaborative experience, right? Like you're really working together to make it best. And you work with a lot of creative, with a lot of talented people, and sometimes these, like what makes a great game, right? Like it's so easy to go in and say this game is not good, or this game sucks, or the experience is not good. And what you realize in the game development is that uh, it's very easy to point out and say that's wrong, but the solution is sometimes not as easy as you think it would be. Like for instance, you have a unit that is overpowered, or an ability that is overpowered. And then you say like, well, let's decrease the powerfulness of this ability, but that might inflict with other abilities that you have. So that's something that I think is a lot of people don't understand, is that the game design or game development of a game is not as easy as saying like, oh, um, there's a mistake, let's decrease this numerical value, and boom, that's it, like a solution presented and fine. No, it's about like, okay, maybe the actual solution is deeper down, and we need to really kind of like change things because this ability or this particular power does not work. And if we change it, everything else changes as well. And the discussions that you have as a game development team is a lot like that. And I mean, everybody that is in games in the industry, you're making art, but at the same time, you're making something that has to be experienced. Sometimes it's fun, and sometimes it can be scary. Sometimes it can be, moving or emotional, but it tries to inflict or affect your emotions in a certain way, right? So if you have a person that says from the outside in says like this game sucks because it's too short, wow, the amount of hours that go into making something is incredible. All the assets and all the things that you see in the game, there's been people who've been working on it, right? Like I'm trying to put it in and put it in the right way.
Yeah.
And then also like what I understand now, and I didn't before, is how can there be games that are not as good as you expect them to be? And it's not because the people don't know what a good game is or not. It's only been a few instances where I thought like, okay, this is not, like this person doesn't really know what good game design is or what a good game is. But a lot of it is because there's time, there's money, there's other things that you need to take into account.
Yeah, I can give a good example for this, because when we implemented the Steam RP to have the demo here in the Steam Game Festival, um, the Unity environment started to track the Steam code in there. So with this and Steam open, Steam started to track my hours into working on the project. So that is
Yeah.
why my Steam account has now like 500 hours in the Beam demo.
Yeah.
And that is just crazy. 500 hours, yeah.
No, yeah, no. It is weird. It's it's but I think that's why showing what you're doing, because it can be interesting. And I mean, I was thinking about it as well. It's like, do people actually want to see how something gets written? And the seeing words appear on screen is not as interesting as seeing, for instance, somebody make a level. But at the same time, I've also seen people do videos of their kind of like thinking processes behind something that they write. Because honestly, the first draft of everything sucks. It's just a mangle of words that you just put there, and then you need to wait a couple of hours or a day or two, and then you go, wait a minute, this is actually maybe I can make something more interesting out of this. But what I'm saying is that thinking about all these little processes, like I think that's why you do need to show what game development is, like to show how it is, to show how people are, how you can have fun making things, but also how much hard work it can be, like
Yeah.
how, yeah, because it is hard work. It's like every other thing that you do. You need to put effort and you need to put time and money and energy into it uh, to have something come out of it as well. Yeah.
And what would you say was the hardest thing you had to write or to put into place in the Beam plot?
The hardest thing, um, it's not necessarily anything particularly hard though. It's more. It's sometimes I think what it is. It's more sometimes work is the work part is to continue to keep on going. It's very easy to write something, just an idea, but then you need to write it out and you need to go deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. And then at one point you get to the point where it's really deep and you go like, I still need to write X amount of chapters or X amount of scenes before it starts to make sense, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have in your head this beautiful painting, but you just started mixing the paint and now you need to start painting. And then 2 hours down the line, you're not even halfway through and you become a little bit like, damn it.
Do you play in your free time? Yeah, well, you already told us that you're a sponge and you pick everything up also from games. But what do you play? What is your last playthrough?
Well, I play a lot, of course. Like I mean, the Steam library. I don't know how many games I currently have, but let me hundreds and hundreds of games. You know, it's been there for a long time. But for instance, Steam Festival, I kind of like. I like strategy games in general. That's kind of my background as well. My PC strategy games. I've got, of course, like I've got the Beam demo as well. I've got Beam as well to take a look at. One of the games I'm currently playing is Total Warhammer, first one. I just got it of course, in a sale, and I'm like, hey, wait, I completely forgot that I had it, so I'm checking it out. Um, Snowtopia demo, which is kind of a cool little game about making your own ski resort. I like these.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like these kind of games as well. I'm playing Cards, which is a very oddly named game because it's Cards with a K, and then we start talking about language, and I go like, why is it called Cards? But it's Cards is a free-to-play cards game about World War II. It's kind of like Hearthstone, but World War II Hearthstone, and surprisingly, it's a very good game. It's very well made, and I keep coming back and playing a little bit more.
Ah, okay.
So yeah, I would definitely highly recommend that. It's really also the progression and the amount of cards that you get and the objective that you get. It's really good.
Did you have the time to look around at the Steam Game Festival to look at some of the demos and titles out there?
Yeah, for instance, like the Snowtopia demo. That's the one that I got. That was it was there, and I got it. That's one of the few games, and I did take a look. I did definitely, but as I mentioned to you before, there's a lot of games out there.
It is, yeah. It is.
Yeah. So yeah.
But there you have it. Give this Snowtopia a look. It sounds like an interesting concept.
Oh yeah, no, Snowtopia is nice. It looks really cool. It's one of those mini Metro games where you just kind of like very casually and easily, play it. Yeah, I would highly recommend it.
Yeah. I think that covers if what's the name of that card game? Well, I think it is Cards with a K, right?
It's Cards with a K. It's Kards. That's it.
Yeah, there was a question from the chat. Okay, then thank you for your time. It was at least for me, it was very interesting to listen in this, and I know where I have to maybe be a little bit more aware of from our side then of things. And I thank you for your time on this last minutes of the Steam Game Festival.
Yeah, I'm happy that never leave the party too late, eh? But that's one other thing. But I would say I'm very happy to do this. It's also one of my first kind of talks or streams to talk about some of the things that I do. So thank you very much for that, Jens, and of course thank you for everybody for watching. And hopefully you got a little bit of thought also what goes behind the story and all the dialogue and all those silly jokes where you go like, really, really, somebody wrote this? Like, yes, that somebody was me. So that's the only thing I'm gonna leave you guys with. So I would say definitely check out the demo of Beam. I think we'll be back soonish in the future, right? With the actual game. Of course.
Actually, right after this interview, I will give the demo a playthrough, and I will do a playthrough without commentary, without camera, without any display things on the screen. So you will get the pure experience of the game, and this will be the last thing for us we will do on the game festival, to show one last time what we do and give you incentive to put Beam on your wish list, which would really help us out.
Yeah, no, definitely wishlist the game because that really helps. And I would say check out the game because it's really cool. I'm very proud of what we are making right now, and I'm also, of course, super excited that everybody's here, on the stream watching it, and taking a look at Jens and guys making the game. So yeah, I would say thank you very much.
Yeah. At this point, we just say goodbye, But
Alright.
don't tune off. We will show the demo in just a few seconds, and enjoy the rest of the Steam Game Festival, and use this time to have a look around at all the small games that normally you would not find. And thanks for Valve and Steam to host this event. In this, yeah, take care and bye bye.
Definitely. Okay, take care.
Go right. There should be an exit that leads outside. Don't worry, we marbles have success rate of 96%.
Yeah, not this way.
Recalculating an alternative route. Please hold.
Let's turn around. Seems the ship is pretty banged up. Ah, it works.
Very odd. This doesn't show up in my schematics. You're sure you went the right way?
Wow, the ship sure did get a beating. Look at this.
The marble can negotiate any obstacle. Please use the jump button. Well done. Sadly, marbles are not equipped to give out treats for good behavior.
Okay, man, just take a deep breath or something. What's this?
This, Esperant Captain Martin, are the crew quarters. The lower levels were unused, but surely you must have gone here once or twice. Or were you too busy?
Yeah, I think I must have. Crew quarters. Bigger ship than I thought.
The elevator will take you to an anti-grav shaft. It will take you straight to the next storage deck.
So are you going to tell me where we are going? The first exit didn't really lead anywhere.
Well, dummy, to the nearest accessible exit, of course. There should be one in the next storage area over, and according to Mother, was operational just before the crash. Martin, don't forget to stop by that console. It will allow me to uplink with the mainframe. Check our progress.
You're still connected to Mother?
We all come from the ship's mainframe, downloaded the very moment the escape pod gets activated and used. This way, in an emergency, a marble has access to the latest files, floor plans, personal records to help us guide our occupants' safety. A part of her lives on in me. And for this special occasion, our personality templates have been upgraded. Who needs a grumpy face in times of trouble?
Okay, just crazy.
I heard that.
Yep.
I can help. Use one of the many life-saving appliances I carry. It is the fire extinguisher, a Class B Halon burst, and just the right fit to tackle this place. It automatically refills, so you'll never run out. It takes a moment to do so, though. then it should activate.
Neat. Whoa! What's that?
I'm analyzing it. According to the ship's manifest, the Stralsund did not carry any crystals.
You think it's dangerous?
My sensors say no. It's a most wondrous artifact. The light beam, it has conductive power. How unusual.
Does it mean we can use it? Let me try something. See, sometimes you just need to be spontaneous and do something. Live a little. You and your plans, your maps, your itemized safety regulations. All a big piece of drag.
That was very inconsiderate of you. We could have died.
We can use these crystals to get out. Thanks to me.
Nice. A repair station. Let's take a look.
This is a storage area you talked about before.
You are 100% correct, Aspirant Captain Martin. One of the many storage spaces. This is level 5B, port front, subsection 23 of the Stralsund. To be exact?
Okay. I heard enough.
Understood. The exit we are looking for lies up ahead. This one should lead straight out into space. The last diagnostic check I received, 0.2 milliseconds before disconnecting from Mother, tells me this area is relatively intact.
Neat. Hey, the exit is over there.
It's almost as if they can think for themselves. How cute.
Is it going to take long?
Only as long as you are going to make it.
This looks like it's going to be fun.
The only way is up, Aspirant Captain. Keep an eye out on the supply of your fire extinguisher. Okay, no mountain too high for this marble. A safe point, Martin. Don't forget to use it.
So, supercomputer that won't shut up, tell me this. What's in these containers anyway?
Oh, Worthwhile query. The Stralsund carried a host of agricultural supplies, bulk goods, raw ore, duraluminum, tier 1 substrate, machine components including anti-grav suspension systems, tracking optics, dry freezed manticore sausages, a consignment for Arius macrotechnology.
Okay, I get it.
Do you want to know more? Great! The agricultural supplies included wheat seeds, barley seeds, other cereals including oats and spelt, tomato seeds, Gentech reinforced apple tree seeds,
Enough.
flammable liquids, nuclear waste, ignition devices, dynamite, sulfuric acid.
Really? Are we safe?
Oh, poor innocent Summer's child. Of course we are not safe. That's why we are here in a marble trying to get out of this place.
Okay, now what?
We need to move up. The exit leading out is at the top portion of the storage area. It seems...
I think I know what's coming.
The only way is to use light beams. Though I don't think that should cause you any trouble now, would it?
No, I can do this. Up you said? Up we go.
Captain Martin, are you all right?
Yeah, sure. All good, all good.
We are not far now. The exit is a bit higher. The turbine is clearly out of control.
I can do this.
Well done. Mother would be proud. A safe point, Martin. Don't forget to use it. ahead is a broken elevator. Let's hope we don't have to go back up this way.
Oh, okay. Now, what the hell is this? Ah, it's bouncy.
It follows the law of reflection while leaving us some air control, with increased velocity.
As I said, it's bouncy.
The airlock is just through there. Watch out though. My sensors indicate that this area has suffered extensive damage. I'm positive. It's on. The exit should be operational. The airlock leading out, but this? I need to recalculate this. Update the projections. This is highly unusual.
That's not Australian. The hull looked old. What did the letters mean? The MAR? What's that?
I don't have access to all the databases. I cannot provide the answer.
Well, great. My marvel is lost. Okay, we need to find an alternative route. Which way? All-knowing Oracle?
There's a path, but you're not going to like it.
Why's that?
You'll see. Suffice to say that the ship you are going to traverse has seen better times. It seems we have to go back up the broken elevator to engineering. Watch it. Watch it. I'm not sure if a drop this high wouldn't irrevocably damage the sphere.
Thanks for the confidence, Marble.
When you fail once, you... I forgot the rest.
It's tougher than I expected. You know, the controls.
Sure, just don't drop us. to the latest data, the next section of the ship is heavily damaged. Be careful, Aspirant Captain Martin. We might both get killed.
I wish you wouldn't call me that.
Like what?
Aspirant Captain. You know, I was in full training, ready to get my golden bars when we got back to Cassiopeia Prime.
You rather prefer me to call you a trainee? Officer on probation? Third-class helmsman?
Martin does it. Just that, please.
As you wish, Martin.
We need to keep moving. Which way are we going?
Still the same way, Martin. Out. We need to find an error. But the destruction is making it difficult to plot the right path. Best not to wait too long.
Who built this stuff? Such an odd way to...
Don't question the designer. By God, if I could eject you,
Okay. Easy does it. You weren't lying when you said this place had seen better times. Let's hope it won't get any worse.
We need to get to the top of this area. Climb the containers. Be careful, though. carefully. Go when it stops.
Whoa, what happened? This is not good.
The whole ship is unstable. I can check the status of the Stralsund. Be quick, have a feeling we need to move with haste. As I thought. You're not going to like this, Martin.
Just break it to me. Give me the bad stuff first, and then the good.
There is no good stuff. We are going to die, rather quick.
Wait, what?
The Stralsund's reactor is going critical. The accident has destabilized the containment field. If we don't get there now, we won't get out of the ship alive. We need to make a detour.
Really? Do we have to? Isn't there any airlock or something in between?
As a matter of fact, no. The current damage level precludes us of getting out here. We need to keep moving towards the reactor. Scram it and find a way out. Let's get going.
Hey, you never told me it was this much fun.
Let's keep going, Martin. No time to waste. We're getting closer to the reactor, Martin. This next section is engineering. According to the latest plans, we need to access the lift.
You mean this lift?
A very astute observation. You need to activate 4 different levers, Martin.
Hey, we didn't see one of these before. Oh, great wizard. What magic does a green beam bestow on us?
It seems that this crystal bends the near-local gravitational waves, almost like an anti-grav elevator.
In it's sticky space syrup, huh?
It seems that this pressure plate activates some platform. You have a couple of options. You decide in which order to activate the levers.
That's one down. How many more to go?
3. I thought you could count.
Hey, no need to get nasty. Again, I'm trying my best here, oh wise marble.
All right. Maybe we should both try harder, don't you agree?
You are impossible. It fits.
Ah, there's something about micrometer precise fits that make me both shudder and amazed.
Did anyone tell you you were weird?
You are the first.
And hopefully the last.
This clearly turns out to be a labyrinth, so you have to choose the right way to get out.
Wow, what a conclusion. Thank you, Miss Marble. is shooting at us? That was slot machine number 2. Three. Did you know that 3 is a magic number?
As magical as your career, aspirant Captain Martin?
What? Those permanent threats really stress me out.